I wasted so many years underperforming through multiple different businesses simply because I didn't have a system in place that allowed me to show up every day predictably and do the work that I needed to do in a timely manner. And today, I want to talk you through the system that I've been able to develop, particularly over the past 5 years, that has allowed me to do just that. So I'm no longer just being busy in my office, wasting time, which is taking precious time away from other important areas of my life, like my family, like my own personal health care, and also from my business too. So today, this is going to be a system involving the biological side of things. It's also going to be a system involving psychology and how you set yourself up from a psychological state to get the most out of every single day. And I can promise you that if you put this into place, you'll be able to reap the rewards. You'll no longer be wasting time in the office, and you'll be able to get so much more done in so much less time. Now, the absolute most important part of a successful day is the night before, and that involves realistically your sleep, right? Why this is so important is because if you sleep well, you're going to set yourself up biologically, but also psychologically, because you've put the right kind of schedule in place for when you are waking up. By doing this, you set the foundations in place for success, because you're going to think clearer, you're going to feel prepared, you're not going to start the day feeling overwhelmed or kind of burnt out because you haven't slept well and you kind of haven't predicted what the beginning of your day is going to look like. Now, because we're going to move into your morning routine in a second, we need to ensure that we are locking in a routine from the night before that allows for efficient sleep, enough sleep, but efficient sleep, allowing you to get enough deep sleep, enough REM, because this is where you're going to process emotions. This is where you are going to kind of recover psychologically and physically. And if you're not doing that consistently, which I see in so many high-performing men or CEOs or entrepreneurs, you're going to start every day a little bit more burnt out than the day before. And this will catch up to you. Believe me, I've been there. I've hit burnout myself. And this is the way you're going to offset that. So first and foremost, get that routine in place. Wake up at the same time and go to bed at the same time every single day, and your body will get used to that. That's one key thing to understand, is that your body really understands regularity, it understands routine. And when you have a routine in place about when you go to bed, when you wake up, it starts to set the physiological processes in place in a timely manner for those different windows. So you'll sleep easier and better if you do that, and you'll also wake up with more energy the more consistently you stick to that routine. Then when you wake up, you need to have a set of routines in place. So again, we start with the night time to get the correct amount of sleep. Then the morning routine. You may have heard the saying, how you start your day is how your day goes. So if you start your day from a place of high stress, chaos, not having things kind of under your control, then the day is going to quickly follow suit, and you'll quickly fall into a state of potential overwhelm, of potentially just losing control of everything and just not getting done what you need to get done. So you have to bring order into your day from the very moment that you wake up. And for me, this is all about having a routine in place that helps to optimize, again, psychology, but also physiology. So we run a particular routine inside the Alpha 21 program called the Body Optimizer routine. Now, this is a routine built off my own routines that I've done for the past maybe 5 or 6 years. And it involves a set of habits, namely hydration with electrolytes, movement, getting the body and the body temperature up and the heart rate going, getting blood pumping to all the tissues. It's super important to get your brain fueled, but also your tissue fueled. It also cleans the body out. So when you move your body, what happens is you drain things like lymphatics, which is that detox system that gets rid of all of the waste from the day before. If you don't move, this waste just builds up, and again, it just adds this burden day after day. So it's really important that your morning routine allows you to clean up the body. So the morning routine, we're looking at hydration first and foremost. And why hydration is so important, guys, is because every process we're going to talk about after hydration is going to be facilitated by proper hydration. So lymphatics, that's a fluid, it's a white fluid. If you're not hydrated, this is going to be more stagnant. So you need to hydrate first. About 800 ml of water with electrolytes is absolutely ideal. The electrolytes allow the water to be used within the cells. Got to do that first thing out of bed. After that, you need to move. So the movement is about getting blood flow around the body. It's about, again, draining the lymph, and it's about flooding oxygen to all of the tissues and kind of just brushing off all the cobwebs from the night before, which are going to keep you in that kind of stiff and kind of tense state. So we need to move. I personally, for movement, I really like to do some walking. All right, that's good for calming the mind and calming the nervous system too. But I also like to do some high intensity exercise too. And when I say high intensity, I mean very, very short bursts. I do 5 to 10 minutes, nothing more, because this is enough to really get that core body temperature high, but not exhaust the nervous system in any way. If you do a full hour, especially if you haven't eaten, your body can already be in like a cortisol dominant state. And if you go and train really, really hard fasted, for me personally, and for a lot of people, this actually pushes you further into stress and can affect the way you perform throughout the day. So for me personally, I try to avoid hard training in the morning, prolonged, and I'll do that later in the day, which I'll talk about in a minute. A bit of movement is key. Get your heart rate up, doing some sprints, low impact sprints, super, super important, and some light movement too. Some walking is great as well. After that, we have to look at doing some cold exposure. Now, some people love this, some people hate it. For me personally, and the guys that we work with, it's a non-negotiable. And I don't mean you have to sit in an ice tub at 1 degree for 5 minutes, because that's just not realistic, and that becomes too much of a stressor. It's just about having enough of that cold exposure to stimulate your body to be even more awake. So what happens here, and why this is so important, or rather why it's so effective, is because if you just spend 1 to 2 minutes in a cold shower, this works through 2 different mechanisms, right? So namely, from a physiological perspective, what this is doing is it's raising cortisol a little bit more, and it's raising dopamine. Dopamine helps you to be more motivated. All right, the higher your dopamine levels, the more motivated you are. We also need cortisol to be spiked in the morning to be more energized. Now, we obviously want this to happen naturally, but we can give it a little kick from this cold exposure. We're not doing enough through this cold 1 to 2 minutes to put the body under too much stress. Again, if you were to sit in an ice tub for 5 minutes, your body would be under high levels of stress, and that would be a little bit too much. So we just need to do enough to get you alert, wide awake, and ultimately start your day. The second way that this works, which to me is almost the more important one, is the psychological side of this, which is basically that nobody wants to jump in a cold shower first thing in the morning. No one, including myself. Like, I've done this for, again, 6 years probably now. I don't want to get in that shower, and every single morning I wake up, I tell myself, you don't have to do the exercise, you don't have to hydrate, and you definitely don't have to get in the cold shower, right? Like, I could say no to those things every single day, but the reason I do it every single time is because I'm winning that battle with my mind every single day. All right, so that's a huge, huge win. If you can start your day successfully by overcoming the part of your mind that wants to keep you comfortable and just, staying within your safe zone, then you have to do something hard within the first hour of the day, and that will set you up for the whole day ahead. So once you've done the routine with the hydration, the movement, and the cold, ideally what you want to do is get some light exposure in the eyes. So next to me I have a light, which is essentially as close to natural sunlight, and I will turn this on for 10 minutes every morning to help stimulate my brain the same way natural sunlight would do if you were to be outside just going for a walk first thing in the morning. Now, that is always going to be the preferable option, is to get outside and actually get natural sunlight in your eyes. But if you don't have that, blessing, because you live in the UK like I do, and it's very, very dark this time of year, having a light like this to help stimulate that process is going to give you many, many benefits in terms of alertness and energy and focus and all of this kind of thing. Remember, like blue light and like natural morning light especially helps to raise cortisol in a natural way. We have a lot of fear around cortisol, and you don't want to play with it in terms of like overstimulating and high doses of caffeine first thing in the morning, but you do want to stimulate it naturally, and that is one of the ways you will stimulate it naturally, is you can do it through cold, but you have to do it through morning light, because that morning light exposure not only wakes you up for the day, it also sets the kind of processes in place for you to produce melatonin at night, which is what's going to help you sleep properly and then do this process all over again. So light exposure in the eyes, always going to be super, super important. One thing I didn't mention too much, I obviously mentioned coffee quite briefly there, but one thing that's really important to understand is, like, you do not want to be waking up and drinking coffee straight away. You want to have a window of at least an hour before you reach for that coffee, because you want your natural cortisol rhythm to kick in and raise before you stimulate it through stimulants. So what you want to do is use this routine that I've spoken about as a kind of time gap that is in place from the moment you wake up. It's not going to take you an hour to work through this. It's going to literally take 20 minutes, but you still want to wait another 40 minutes after that before you have that coffee. And I guarantee your energy through the day by doing this alone will be far more predictable and far more sustained without that kind of dip off where you're getting those periods of brain fog or lack of productivity creeping in, right? Now, what we have to understand about human beings is that we are all different, and how we operate is going to be dependent on us as individuals. Some people work really well later on to the day, Some people are most efficient in the morning. So what you need to do is identify when the most optimal window of time is for yourself to get the most creative and the highest level work done. For me personally, my time is between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. I call this the deep work phase. This is work block number 1. What we have to understand is the human body works in 90-minute windows, right? This is the same for sleep. It works in 90-minute cycles. And ideally, you want to have a little mini break every 90 minutes. So for example, my work block is between 6 a.m. That's where I get all my most intense, like creative work done. I will always work for 90 minutes before having a 5-minute break where I just get up, move, let my body move, let blood flow, optimize around the body, take my focus away from what I'm doing, and then I'll sit back down for my second 90-minute block. All right, so that's 2 90-minute blocks with a mini break in between. Again, this is human physiology that we work in 90 minutes. So we're all the same, where productivity and energy will start to dip off after 90 minutes. So it's worth having these windows. You can even get a little timer, which works in 90-minute windows. So every time it goes off, you just take a little bit of a break, and then you can get back to it for the second 90 minutes. I suggest moving as much as possible. You don't have to do half-an-hour walks. You don't even have to do 10-minute walks. Just get up, get your blood flowing, and start moving again every 90 minutes. I personally work for 2 90-minute blocks. That brings me up to around 9 a.m, just after 9 a.m, which then I'll have another break. And that's going to be a bit of a longer break. Again, I'm going to try and move and get a little bit more light in my eyes if I can get outside. Perfect. At this time, no matter where you are in the world, you should be able to get light in your eyes around 9 a.m, between 9 and 10. I personally like to fast up until around 10 a.m, so I won't be eating. I'll have a black coffee, maybe some MCT oil to keep the fasted state, but also help me stay energized. But I personally prefer to fast until about 10 a.m. At 10 a.m, I'll have my first meal. Now, this meal is so important because if you get this meal wrong, you can really disrupt your energy and productivity for the rest of the day. And what I mean by that is if you have, let's say, a high glycemic meal full of carbohydrates, fast absorbed carbohydrates, maybe things like bread or things like, even like a banana, right? What this can do is set your blood sugar off on a little bit of a roller coaster for the day. And a lot of people find that the moment they consume carbohydrates, energy and productivity in terms of brain focus can decline a little bit, all right? Not everyone, some people actually feel they're a lot more productive on carbohydrates. That's why it's going to be person dependent. I'm one of those where I feel like my productivity goes a little bit down after carbohydrates. So what I do is I stick with a high fat, high protein meal, light, because I don't want to take too much energy away from the work that I'm putting in at that stage, because I'm still kind of in my highest performance work up until around lunchtime. It's starting to dip off a little bit after that 9 a.m. window, but it's kind of, that is still where I'm getting most of my peak work done. So I typically have a meal based around protein and based around fat. So this might be eggs, it might be some feta cheese, it might be avocado, it might be some meat. Typically this can change, but it's light. I'm not overindulging, I'm not stuffing myself, because again, the more energy that is being driven to this area, the less energy you're going to have to fuel your brain, so you can get that fatigue that hits later in the day, right? You have to make sure your digestion is in a good place for that. If you are getting very, very tired after you eat your meals, it's a sign that you aren't digesting the food properly, and that's causing more energy to be directed down here than is necessary. So just make sure that meal is being digested properly. You can use support for this, apple cider vinegar, digestive enzymes, ginger, things like this help. But the key is to make sure you're just not stuffing yourself, because that's going to drain your energy for the rest of the day. After I've eaten the high protein, high fat meal, what I will then do is I will always try and get a little bit of movement in. This will help me digest the meal, this will help me regulate glucose levels a little bit, and again, prepare me for the second work block. And I say second work block because although I split that first work block into 2 90-minute windows, it's still essentially my deep work block. It's still one work block for me. All right, so then around about 10 a.m, once I've eaten that meal, I'll have 10 minutes just to move. And post that, I will then start my second work block. That second work block, what you'll notice through as the day progresses, if you were to kind of have an outside perspective of myself, you'll notice that the type of work that I do changes through the day. It gets more simple, it gets more mundane and repetitive, so I push the tasks that I know inside out to later in the day, because I can do them no matter how much my focus has dipped off, or if my energy takes a little bit of a dip, I can still do them because I know them inside and out. So for example, if I'm taking client calls, I can do them with my eyes closed because I've done them so many times. If I'm doing data, I can do that very easily. Whereas if I need to create something new, a system, or if I need to think of a new idea, that's going to happen in that first block. So as the day goes on, I'm going to take the creativity levels are going to be reduced further and further. And so this second block, there still may be some stuff in there, but it's going to be reduced from that first work block. And in this second work block, I may well do some coaching calls with people. I may well do some team management calls with some of the staff, but nothing is going to happen. Nothing too much is going to happen in there. It's going to demand too much intense thought process for me, because that's going to happen in that first 3-minute window. And if you do this properly, by the way, guys, you don't need more than a 3-hour window to get that level of work done. You just need to be efficient. You need to prime yourself for it properly, and you need to make sure you have a time. There's a very powerful psychological component to having a time, a visible time ticking away. It creates urgency. It stops you scrolling your phone. It stops you wasting time. It stops you getting interrupted by people if people are trying to get hold of you. You kind of have your boundaries in place to mean people aren't going to take you off course. That second window will bring me up until lunch. So that window can be 90 minutes. It could be 2 hours. So this brings me up to around 12:30. Again, I typically won't eat till about 1 to 2 o'clock. The rest of my day will involve me doing a work block, taking a mini break. Maybe I just take myself out of my office for a few minutes, and then just go in with a clear plan. The thing you have to understand is you have to have a clear plan for each of those work blocks. There has to be a framework in place. If you don't have structure or clarity around what you're going to be doing on those work blocks, then anything can happen. Your life turns into chaos very quickly, and you do find yourself getting distracted and doing things that just don't move you forward, right? Then I'll have my lunch. Obviously lunch, because I know I train later in the day, I'm going to start fueling up on carbohydrates around that point, right? So around about lunch, I'll have my first dose of carbohydrates. This will be a minimal dose because I'm going to have another carbohydrate-based meal later in the day. At lunchtime, this could be anything from chicken and a little bit of rice. It could be potato. It could be some, again, not overly heavy because I've still got periods of work to get done. But I'm going to have a light meal there just to kind of get that energy up. And that often, again, getting some carbohydrates in there can give you that little boost for the second half of the day where you can come back, fighting stronger and with more focus. In that second half of the day, there's realistically 2 more blocks. I finish my days around about 5 to 6 p.m. sometimes if I have a lot of work to do. But around about 5 o'clock is when I finish my day. And there's going to be like 2 main blocks after lunch of around about 90 minutes to 2 hours that I'll get in. Again, similar routine. I'll work for 90 minutes on a particular task, having this laid out in front of me at the start of the day, scheduled into my calendar so I know exactly what each block looks like, and then making sure every 90 minutes to 2 hours maximum, I'm just getting out, getting some light, getting some movement in there, hydrating throughout the day, and then just resetting with what I need to do. All right. I also have one little game changer for you guys, is I have a lock box here, and my phone will go in there during a working day to ensure that I'm not getting distracted by too much, unless I need it for a particular task. But as soon as I don't need it and I've got something to do, I will then put my phone away in the lockbox so that it's out of sight and I don't need to think about it, right? This is really important because most people waste far too much time scrolling their phone and doing pointless stuff that isn't serving the greater good of what they want to achieve, right? As I say, the later portion of the day, I hand select the most repetitive tasks for that. So that's like client calls or anything that I've done a million times. They'll go into kind of 2 to 3 p.m. onwards is going to be tasks like that, where I know it's just a matter of getting through it and doing it, and I know I can perform well at them every single time, right? I'll then eat my final pre-workout meal around about 4 to 5 p.m. I train in the evening time. Now, the timing of your training becomes super important, right? I train personally, guys, it's really important to understand is my purpose of training is for optimal health, optimal productivity, optimal focus. If I start to neglect training, everything we've spoken about here starts to go downhill, because remember, exercise is one of the most important things for neurological health, brain, focus, productivity. If you're not exercising, you'll notice those things starting to dip off very, very quickly. So my training has to be timed perfectly, and that training has to happen not too close to bedtime, because that will cause an excess raise in cortisol and affect sleep. But obviously I have to time it with work. So it's typically I'll do this in the windows of between 5 and 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock is the latest, all right? Because I typically try and get to bed 9:30, 9. So if I'm training at 7, it gives me, maybe an hour to an hour and a half before I'm going to bed. So you have to get this timing right. And I know this isn't perfect. Sometimes I have to train later in the day because of, family, kids, things like this. But ideally you want to train in the window that is far enough away from your sleep that it allows you to calm that nervous system for sleep, all right? And because your sleep, as we've already spoken about, your evening routine is arguably the most important part of this whole process. We need to allow a good window of time, ideally like an hour, to calm this nervous system down before you sleep. Because if you don't do that, you're going to go to bed stimulated, and you may, have all these racing thoughts, raise heart rate, raise body temperature, and you're just not going to sleep very well. So you need to have a window, and this is great if you've got kids, because in this time it means you can read books. You want to make sure light exposure is dimmed. You can read books with them. You can kind of tell stories. You can do stuff, very interactive stuff stuff that's calm. Anything from building Lego or jigsaws or reading or anything like this is a great activity that you can do with your kids later into the evening time, because essentially it's very calming and very relaxing for the nervous system, rather than watching films or getting all of this exposure or stimulation from devices, which is the worst thing you can do on the run up to bedtime. Now, here's something that may shock some people, and that is that I typically only train between 3 and 4 times per week. All right, most people think you have to train 5 and 6 times per week. So you're hearing about my routine from a training standpoint, but I only do that 3 to 4 times per week, which allows me the other nights to have more time with my kids and more time with my partner, where we can do more kind of like family-based activities and just have a bit more time to maybe go out and do some things, right? And the reality is you don't need to train more than 3 to 4 times per week. You really, really don't. The reason why I train in the morning and do that kind of 10 minutes of intense work is I know that I'm going to get some movement in every single day, and I'm always going to hit that kind of step count, movement count regardless. And then my intense sessions, if I just focus on 3 to 4, that gives me the rest of the week to really focus that time towards spending time with my partner. Now, fortunately, me and Katie are in a position where we enjoy doing the same things. We may read books next to each other in bed. We're gonna just talk. We may watch something on telly if or making music together. She has a guitar, I have a piano, and I have a handpan, so we kind of just get involved in activities like that. We love creative stuff, right? Because it's very easy to get to the end of the day and shove the telly on and just kind of like numb your mind, and it's easy to do that when you've had a particularly stressful day, but ultimately it doesn't serve the next day. And we've just found we get so much more, and we have spent so much better quality time with each other when we are actually doing something creative and creating something together. And music is a great way we do that. We also do like coloring with the kids, or drawing with the kids, or just building stuff with the kids, or just taking the kids out, right? And that window of time is super important. It's in many ways way more important than getting to the gym, but it's key that you do both. It's key that you have non-negotiables in place around exercise, taking care of yourself, because as you'll hear a million times, you can't pour from an empty cup, and you don't have to let it get to a point where you realize the full extent of that saying, right? You can actually just put some simple non-negotiables in place where you can do all of it, right? Which is what I've managed to develop over the last 5 years, where I guess the balance is there, right? So the key with all of this routine is that we have all of the, as I say, non-negotiables locked in, and that is performance and work. So you're driving the growth of maybe your business, your career, but also yourself, right? You're driving that personal growth forward as well. So you have that in place from work. You have your health locked in. So that's a morning routine will do so much for you. A routine around your food will do so much for you. You don't have to overcomplicate this. You just need to have predictability and routine about your day, right? So that's knowing when you're going to eat your meals, knowing when you're not going to be eating, knowing when you are going to be doing your movement, knowing when you have family time, knowing when you are doing something for yourself. This is absolutely key, and it can easily feel, like I'm the first to say it can easily feel like there's not enough hours in the day. We could all do with a little bit of extra time, but if you know how to structure your day properly, it feels like there's enough time, right? And for me, like, it's not necessarily about more time, it's about how efficient you can be with that time. How present can you be with your kids when you do have your kids? How present can you be with your partner when you do have your partner? How well can you perform at work so you're not just wasting time sat at your computer doing nothing, or whatever your work looks like? You don't want to waste time there. Same with the morning. It's super easy just to fall into the routine of scrolling your phone, but you could waste 15 minutes of your day, which could have been spent taking care of yourself. And I'm going to be totally honest, most people lie to themselves and say they don't have the time, and it's a complete lie. The bottom line is they're just not using their time efficiently, right? They're spending way too much time being busy in the office, and then when they have their kids, they're not fully present, and so they feel like they need more time with their kids because they haven't given them what they need. Same with the partner. The reality is, if you just get efficient with your time and you have a routine in place like the one I've explained, you don't necessarily need more time. You'll find that you can get everything done within those windows, and that's what's going to lead to a purposeful and fulfilled life. So let's just recap everything we've kind of gone through today. The reality is, guys, everyone's going to be different, and these routines are going to be unique to you, but the key is that you have a routine in place that allows you to hit those non-negotiables: self-care, movement, hydration, good food, making sure you are not an empty cup. That's super important for everything else to work properly. Making sure you have efficient work blocks that have been scheduled, and you know what you're going to be covering, and you've factored in your own energy management within those blocks, because you might focus later in the day, I focus better in the morning time. Everyone's going to be different, and you've got to work these routines and these blocks around when you perform at your best. You also need to have that balance at the evening time around the most important things in your life: family, kids. You need to have focus blocks in there where you are not distracted, you are present, you are doing things which fulfill that area of your life life. Same with your partner. You need to have that time programmed in too. And then you need to have a routine in the evening time that allows you to do this all over again with energy, purpose, drive, and predictability about what you can do that next day. And a little bit of time spent in the evening just mentally preparing yourself for the next day is an absolute game changer. You may want to do some journaling, some planning, some kind of like time scheduling for the next day. Or you may just want to give yourself 5 minutes just to think like, okay, what's tomorrow bringing? What do I want to get out tomorrow? How do I want to show up? This kind of thing. These conversations can be huge in just creating the intention that drives your life forward across every single aspect. Thanks for watching today, guys. I just wanted to give you a really basic overview as to what a day looks like and how I get the most out of my day today in terms of work, family life, and everything else, and how I have found a good balance that really serves what I want to be doing and how I want to show up on a daily basis. I hope you got some value from this. If you did, please hit subscribe for more videos. I share videos like this all the time, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video.